StreamYard today. And we are live, folks. So, hello. I am hiding under a band of orange here, at least orange and green mix. Welcome, everybody, to Are You Truly Living? Where we are exploring what it means to live consciously. I was thinking about this earlier on. Live consciously, courageously, and with connection. I think that's some stuff, don't you think?
Yeah.
I think this sums up what this is all about. I think we've been kind of working it through over the last, I don't know, I mean, this is quite scary. This is like episode 17, if you want to call it episodes. Yeah, so here we are, moments of impact. The word legacy for me, I don't know, I will be honest, it kind of makes me shudder a little bit because that makes me feel like it's done, it's gone, it's over, you know, it was. Whereas actually, I think it's different from that. I don't know what when I say the word legacy, guys, what does that word shout and scream to you?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, Laura, because for me, it's what you're leaving behind, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that when you get into midlife, suddenly it comes into sharp focus. You do start to think, oh, actually, I'm not going to live forever. I've been busy building my life and stuff for me and stuff for my family, but actually, have I made a mark on the world in the way I would like? And that's certainly happened to me, and it's why I've changed everything about my life and my lifestyle, because I suddenly became very aware of my impact on the people around me and the planet. And I think that was about building a legacy. So it's kind of, I feel like I'm in that now, building a legacy, which is about what I'm going to leave behind.
But Mark, I guess the question for me is it about building, or is it about actually every step that we take along the way is actually building? So it's not about suddenly a moment in life, but actually every single point in our life is, I don't know. I mean, I don't have clearly I don't have all the answers. I'm just curious. I'd love to hear the answers, obviously. Clearly. Make life easier. But you know.
But it's an interesting thing to think through, right? Sorry, my microphone is over here. In terms of expectancy and what we are and what we're trying to achieve and who we are. You know, we have this idea of being a finished product. And Dan, legacy is a lovely word. And I suppose it's a word we don't think about until a certain point in time, and maybe until a certain age as well, that we really don't kind of see it in those terms. Maybe having kids kind of gives us that idea, but I don't even know if that's it. I think sometimes it is when we kind of look back in our own life and we go, God, was it worth it? Did I do these kind of things? Am I happy with what I've achieved, or have I left a stamp on anything? And we like this idea of, oh, look at, this is me, I'm complete, I'm finished, you know, and because we live in a modern culture of, it's the next thing, I get that done, and then we nearly apply that to ourselves. Oh, if I do this, then I will be whatever. But we never actually get to be whatever, because there's always something else. There's always some other version of ourselves. There's always that sense that we're always becoming. We're always in a state of becoming. You know, do we ever actually find the answer? Or are we always just living the next question and living the next question? And I think that becomes our challenge for a lot of it, because we want the answer. We want completion. We want this done. There we go. That's legacy. You know, and look, there are people, and I know I've worked with people on a one-to-one basis who have a legacy of leaving, you know, wealth and finances for their kids, and that's fantastic, right? And that makes them feel good, and that's a great thing to be able to do, right? But I suppose when we think of that, it's the legacy of who we are. What kind of imprint or stamp have we put on the world? If we've put anything, you know, Shakespeare comes to mind, like, you know, just this brief dance upon the stage, you know, but there's a part of us that wants to do something, but it has to be careful of that ego sense of wanting to do it, you know, wanting to do something to prove to others, or to be for others, or to be regarded as something, as opposed to do something that we can be proud of in ourselves, that we can feel like you know what, that's something that no one can touch and no one can take from me. And I'm pleased I did that, and I'm happy that I did that. Because I've often thought, like, will that be enough? Will this be enough? Will that be good enough? Will that be good enough? But all of it is, as long as it's better or progress or positive change or moving forward in a way that makes you happy that you're in a new space as opposed to the space you were.
I'm gonna challenge that it has to be something like forward thinking, because I don't know, I guess the question I have in my head is, a bit like, the orange bar that is sitting, squishing my head. Moments
Looks like steadily pushing you down.
Thank God I'm only little, hey? But I guess the thing that's going through my mind right now is the word legacy that we kind of apply to something in the future, but actually is legacy literally every single moment, every single time that we leave an imprint in someone else's life. Is that not legacy? Is that not what it's really about? It's not a grand gesture. It's not what I'm going to do tomorrow. It's literally how I leave a footprint in someone else's heart, in someone else's life, in someone else's world, that it has meaning for them tomorrow. And literally that could be that big, it just is almost. And so my challenge is and I hear what you're saying, both of you, but I'm questioning whether we make legacy to be this huge thing, but in actual fact we're creating legacy all the time just by showing up, being real, being ourselves, because it matters to us. So it matters to Dan that it's men stand up for themselves. It matters to Mark because your daughters, your wife feels safe in the world, and that you are beginning to understand, that your version. Oh, we've lost Mark, but he'll pop up, I'm sure. And so I suppose that's the thing I'm questioning, is that actually, is that not legacy? And that we make this big deal about legacy being good, he's back. And so I guess that's the thing I'm going through my brain, is that do we make out legacy to be this big thing, this big word, where in actual fact, when we show up true to ourselves, conscious about what matters most to us and the people that matters most to us, are we not creating legacy every single day?
Yeah, I totally hear that, Laura. And I think, today's episode's called Building Impact Through the Moments That Matter Most. And the beauty of life and the beauty of existence is we can decide and declare who we are in each moment in relation to what's happening, right? And that's legacy, isn't it? Because how we respond, what we do, but more importantly, who we are being, has impact, doesn't it? It has impact on the people around us. It has impact on the planet, and it has impact that will last. And generally, with other people, what they remember about you is how you made them feel, right? So that very much is going to be about who you were being in that moment. And what I like about the way that you put it, Laura, is that we can be aware that in order to live a life in which we leave legacy, in each and every moment, we need to own who we are being, and therefore what we are doing and what we are having, in order that we create a legacy that we want, right? So instead of, unconsciously reacting and living on autopilot and allowing our conscious mind to go, oh, we know what this is. This is how we react to that. Because that's how we get stuck, right? We get stuck in an old version of ourselves, as Mark was saying, life's about moving forward, and it's a journey, isn't it? What you realize as you go through life is there isn't a destination. There isn't a point where you put your feet up and light the cigars and go, well, that's that done and dusted. That's my legacy. Because each time we push through a new level of awareness or consciousness, or we go and do something different, or we act bold, or we take a risk, or we create something new, that's us deciding and declaring who we are. And that's about impact, isn't it? And also that's, as you say, Laura, that's legacy.
And I think to that point, I think what you're describing, Dan, is that this whole thing around being conscious about how we behave, and being conscious that our behavior could be interpreted in one way, and being conscious that behavior could look like this, could look like that, but actually could end up being our legacy, not necessarily. And I think this goes back to Mark's post this morning around, that we're so quick to blame somebody else. So for me, this is the behavior piece, where we are quick to blame because it's easier to blame, to say it's somebody else's fault. They did this behavior. This is how it is. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, Mark, but there's part of me that says those moments when we don't take responsibility, that can equally be in the moment our legacy. And what do we do with that? How do we deal with that?
Well, look, everything we do has an impact. Everything we do has an implication, Laurie, which is why I like that idea. It's radical to take 100% responsibility. It's really, really radical to do it. And very, very few of us can do it. I know, Jesus, I can point out a million things where I don't take responsibility for in the right way. And I think we are quite aware of where we don't take that responsibility. I think we know, if we know ourselves, we know, I didn't do the right thing there. I could have done that a bit differently. And so that's why it's so important, because we are creating that legacy in every moment, because by the decisions we made, by the actions we take, that defines us, that defines who we are. In that moment, it defines us. And even though it doesn't define us as we are, because we can change, but if the thing is, it may define us in certain situations, it may define us with certain people, because that action will forever be judged. There's this example always springs to mind. I was leaving a music festival, it's 20 years ago, with people that I was friendly with. And we were driving out in our cars, everyone very jaded and in a bad way after, sleeping in tents for 4 days in the rain in Ireland, walking through muddy fields and having a good time. And there was a car broken down. There was people broke down trying to start the car. So I was like, oh, Jesus, okay, we have to stop, and I stopped. And the people I was with were like, why are you stopping? I was like, well, because they need help. I said, yeah, but we want to get home. We're just going. And they went off. And that was a moment when they made a decision that they wanted to get home. And I wanted to get home too, because there's a part of me that needed to stop and help the person who needed help. I had to do it. I couldn't, if I had to drive down that road, I'd have been 2 miles down the road going, why didn't I stop for that person? That person, I could have just helped them push that car to get it going, to get it started, whatever it was. And this is a perfect example. And I'm using someone else as an example. I know I have piles of my own, and I really should be using my own in that one, but that one comes to mind all the time, because what does that tell you about that person? Did the person just made a mistake? Were they just tired? Did they just want to go home? But then everyone makes a judgment on the back of that. So the 100% responsibility for ourselves. And so to bring that back to that idea of taking radical responsibility, a part of taking radical responsibility for yourself is accepting that you have no control of what anyone else thinks of you either, right? And understanding and knowing that, and accepting that if you take an action that does not impress other people, then you have to expect people will not be impressed by that action. And that's simple and that's true. But that's also freedom in taking that responsibility, even if it's not a good action in general karmic terms or whatever you want to put it. So it does just demonstrate that every moment we are always have that choice. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to a basic thing that we can all understand. The classic phrase is no use crying over spilt milk, right? I've been there with my kids, and they've picked up milk and they've picked it up upside down, or the lid's been off it and it's just spilt all over the floor. And you're like, oh, Jesus, what are you doing? What, immediately roar and you shout. And so what's the impact of that? What's the legacy of that? The legacy of it is the fear, oh God, I did something wrong. What is it, right? And I remember I had done that. And I remember one other time it happened again. And I was reading something about like take a curious approach. And I went and said, oh, wow, isn't it very interesting? Because they braced themselves, ready to be shouted at. I said, isn't it very interesting the pattern the milk is making across the tiled floor? And they're like, oh, it is, yeah, isn't it? You know, and like, isn't that just a perfect example of there's legacy and there's difference? You know, what would have been the benefit of taking that other approach that I would have always taken? And so to your point, Laura, you're right. Like in every moment, the action we choose in that moment has a ripple effect, has an impact. And where will that impact go based on what we've done?
And I think you've just, described it so well, Mark, in the fact that, in that split session, you'd have the angry moment where the milk's gone over to the, oh my gosh, look, and that for me is legacy. It's, and I'm just going to say it out loud. It drives me nuts. Oh, my legacy is going to be this, as if it's some grand gesture, that we're going to just pop along, and for this moment of time we're going to deliver our legacy, and then we're going to pop off and do something different. That's not legacy. Legacy is every single moment where something really matters to us. I mean, only earlier today I was having a conversation with someone. He didn't know me, I didn't know him. We just brought together because of a shared connection to something we're both part of. And I just offered, I said, look, all right, let's just have a conversation. And he was expecting 10 minutes. I go into the space going, no, people's time is valuable. We will share whatever time is needed to have the discussion that we need. And it was one of those conversations where he was like completely energized by the end of, it was only an hour, and it completely changed his frame, because I just sit there going, time is the greatest gift I can give. It's precious, but I will only give it to those who are prepared to, honor it back. And he was prepared to honor it back. The person he'd wanted to speak to hadn't honored it back, and that was part of the conversation we were having. But it was in that moment that the whole conversation changed, the whole impact changed, the legacy. It's how people feel once you finish the conversation. It's not about that I did anything. I just held space. We just had a conversation. Could have been 10 minutes. It could have been an hour and a half, as far as I'm concerned. But I think that's this is what frustrates me about when I hear, well, it's going to be my legacy. And I'm just going, look, this is not a grand statement. This is actually about simple, everyday things of giving people space, allowing them to be heard, having a conversation. That's legacy. That's impact in the moment, because that matters to me, that those voices are heard, people are understood. That's legacy. And maybe I'm wrong.
I really like that. And I don't think there's right or wrong here, Laura, is there? It's,
No.
When you asked me at the start what I thought legacy was, I gave you a bit of a dictionary definition of what I thought legacy was, right? And then you said, well, this is what I feel like legacy is. And then Mark, we'll all have a different version of what we believe legacy to be. And I really like your version, Laura, right? Because and, with Mark's post this morning about radical responsibility, the thing I love about radical responsibility is it gives you power. It makes you the conductor of your own life. And I learned radical responsibility from my cat, because my cat, whatever it did, it owned it. If it fell off the wardrobe, it sprang up and went, yeah, meant to do that. Looked pretty cool there, didn't I? And then would... Look at him. And he's zen. He's not stressed. He's not worried about what people think of him. He's owning everything that's happening in his space. And I thought, wow, what a way that is to live your life, where even though we're not in control of anything other than our words, thoughts, and actions, we feel much more in control if we take the view that we own everything that happens to us. We're not, the minute we point fingers and we start blaming and whinging and complaining, we totally give our power away. We give somebody else and something else, events and circumstances, the ability to upset us, the ability to affect our peace of mind. So when we take radical responsibility, when we think of legacy in the way that you put it there, Laura, right? This is how we act with integrity then, isn't it? If we're aware that we're having impact in everything that we do and everything we say and everything that we think, then we're not just going to allow our mind with its agenda of wanting to keep us safe and loving what's familiar and all those things to make us act in a way we don't like, to make us step out of integrity when our words and our thoughts and our actions are no longer aligned. We're going to be a bit more conscious because we're thinking, right, in every moment here, I'm creating a legacy. And I think what you said there, Laura, about how you gave the guy that gift of time, I don't think it's time that you gifted him. It was presence that you gifted him. It was your presence and your listening and your attention. I think that's it. It's, you know, time is our most precious resource, but we spend it with our focus and our attention. And you spending that time with him, giving him your full attention and your presence, that's legacy, isn't it, Laura? That's impact. That's how we can impact other people, by not turning up with our own stuff and our own agenda. And
maybe that's it, though, Darren. Maybe that's the point. Maybe legacy is us showing up in a space that's real for us, that feels real in the moment. And actually, so legacy is just actually a pretty rubbishy word, but actually it is the impact, the emotional impact, the feeling that we have with another, how the other feels it, whichever is real. So it could be, I mean, it could be a myriad of things. It's not necessarily, you know, it could be the way I describe it. It could be the way that Mark describes it. It could be the way you describe it. But it is where there is an emotional connection, because it's felt between two people, between a broader number of people potentially. That is what legacy is about. It's not I wrote a giant thing and that's my legacy because it now has some gold stars associated with it. I don't know, and that's what I'm guessing I'm hearing from what both of you are saying, is like, there's no definition. It's not, it could be huge just because that's what happens, but it could be really small and that have a huge amount of impact and legacy for everybody that went before. I don't know, Mark, am I like, you know, having a rambling moment where my brain has gone super duper curly whirly? It's fine.
I don't think so, Laura. I don't think so, Laura. Like it's like the title of this one was, you know, building a legacy through the moments that matter. Okay, and I suppose what we're kind of thinking through is that all moments matter. Like, what moment doesn't matter in what you do? Sitting to have a cup of tea, does that matter in the greater scheme of things? No, it doesn't, but maybe it does. Maybe when you sat to have that cup of tea, you took a moment to yourself, and that allowed you to regather your thoughts to be your best self in the next moment. Like, you know, what moment doesn't matter? Like, I think of it in terms of, and Dan, you said that lovely line earlier about, you know, people will always remember how you make them feel, and they always do. They will always remember how you make them feel. Like, it's so important. Like, you know, you walk into a space, and even you might be feeling like, oh, I'm tired today, or I'm not with this today, and you walk into a space. I remember being in the Middle East in particular, and I was in this coffee shop, and this guy came in, and you obviously know the greeting there can be wa alaikum, right? And this guy walked in, and his booming voice, he just looked around and he goes, wa alaikum, to the whole little cafe, like, and everyone turned around. Oh, and in that little moment, everyone felt a little bit better, a little bit more alive, a little bit more awake, a little bit more together. Like, I walked into the spin class that I do this morning, and It's been like a romantic date between me and this other guy for the last few weeks because no one else has been turning up at 6:30 in the morning. And this morning there was 3 people who hadn't been there in about 2 months. And I was like, welcome home. We're back at last. I was only thinking about it afterwards. Like, and I was taught, because of my background and growing up in a small country shop, that, you know, you always were greeting someone new. There was always someone in the house or someone in the shop that you had to walk up and say hello to. And my mother and father would always generally beat it, like literally beat it into you, like, say hello to this person, say hello to this person, you know, have you said hello to this person yet? You know, even today, if I'm with my mother, like, I'm 47 years old, did you say hello to her? I'm like, yes, thank you, mom, I did, you know. But it's a little thing, right? And if you want to talk about legacy, they have given me a legacy of how you greet everyone as if you're happy to see them. You greet everyone as if they matter to you. You greet everyone as if, not just as if, that's not fair. You greet everyone because they're important, because they matter, because whoever they are matters in whatever space you find them in. And people remember that because it matters to them. Like, I've had conversations with people years later who said, Jesus, like, my friend used to say this to me. She said, like, when we called to your house when you were a student, if you weren't there, it wasn't the same experience at all. Because they'd walk in and I'd get, oh, Jesus, welcome, come in, will you have a cup of tea, you know? Because that's how I was taught that you do that. And I didn't think about it as it being an impact. It's only years later where I realized it, but I was taught that that's the right way to do it. And I also wouldn't have felt right in myself if I hadn't to do that. And to me, like, because the title, like that little orange box that's squishing you down into your square there, Laura, says moments of
I'm sure anyway.
it says moments of
Someone is
impact.
always, you know, like, I have to lose half my title, but it's fine, you know, I'm the noisy one and I'm clearly the only female here. So,
But isn't that it though? Because it says moments of impact, and it's in every moment there is an impact, in every single moment. And from a small little thing we can do, it's amazing how it changes a whole atmosphere, a whole energy, a whole space. But just walking in and being happy to be there and being appreciative of the people who are there and saying hello.
it's so true. So let me let you into a little secret.
Oh, well, like the one that when I dial into the call, or is it a different secret?
No, it's a different kind of secret to that one. As you know, I did a Women's Voices event at the weekend.
Okay.
Which was all about, ironically, bringing women together, although we had male allies together, allies, if I can say the word, together. And in a moment, well, no, it was a moment that mattered to me. I wanted to write a card inside all the books we bought. I bought an extra 7 books for the leaders who'd supported delivering the event. And inside I wrote, I mean, it nearly killed me because I'd hoped that I could print it on my computer. It just jammed every single time. So I had to handwrite it. But it was a handwritten card with a pin from a designer called Elizabeth Gage, who had 10 years ago created a pin. It was a wedding pin for cancer research that my husband and I bought a whole load between us for our wedding, and there was some left, and I wanted to share them with individuals who have been part of the journey for last Saturday. And at the 11th hour, I started to get, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this?
Mind kicks in, doesn't it?
And I was like, because the words are quite emotional, because the essence around the pin, which looks like a leaf, I mean, it's tiny, is that it is 2 sides of hope and courage. And so I'd written in each of these cards a personal message to all of the speakers and to all of those who had supported the journey, because it is a collective effort. The whole point is it's a collective effort, so that we can collectively do better. And it was one of those things where, God, something at the 11th hour ago, somebody made a comment, and I went, have I done the right thing? And I just thought, no, this is me. This is what this event means to me. This is what all of the individuals who have given time, given space, given energy to be here means. So just go with it, Laura. We'll see what happens. And I am not going to lie, at about 4 a.m. on Saturday morning when I was still doing stuff for this. But it mattered. And then when, after Saturday had been, and so I know I've written some posts yesterday, and the green cards that are there, I mean, that's just a few of them. And they say, you've thought of everything. That for me is what I wanted. That for me is legacy. That is the impression, the footsteps, or the footprints I wanted to have in that moment for those individuals who are some of them stepping into a room when they've been harassed, sexually assaulted, all the rest of it, but they were attending that room as themselves, as people, to come collectively with 70 odd other people that they did not know, and I wanted them to feel safe. And in that moment, they felt safe. And I have literally, because it popped across my screen and I didn't intentionally, just how the computer works, I've just received another message saying from somebody how much they appreciated the note that I put inside the book that was given. And I just did it because it mattered. And for me, that is a moment of impact. I'm not sitting there going to be, I don't care, because in that moment, it mattered. And I think we forget about those moments that matter. And that is legacy for me. And, granted, we can all create these words around what it means, but I think we have to recognize we don't have to make it complicated. We can make it really simple, and we can really have an impact with just the simplest of moments. And maybe I will just get all totally emotional, but I think that's kind of, I think it's been really, really brought home to me in the last week, through everything that I've done with this and the people that I've had conversations with. So yeah, anyway, usually it's me who's like quite quiet. So now I will just...
It's so important, Laura, isn't it? And from what both you and Mark said there, it's the small moments and it's the small things. It's just that getting out of your bubble and out of your head, where we're all stuck in the modern world, aren't we? Or we're all got our faces shoved in this the whole time, everywhere we go, and nobody can see us, and we're only ever talking to people through a device.
But Dan, it's like when you say about, your vegetables that you're growing, and that, that for me is like moments of impact. It's legacy. That is creating something that we never expected that we would be able to do. That is legacy. That matters to you, that is empowering, that is like impactful, that is legacy. And I think we get hooked up on I've got to do something really big and bold and proud, but actually, no, it's these things that actually really, really matter, that really make a difference.
Yeah, and you've changed my mind tonight, Laura, because I've been obsessed for about the last 5 to 10 years of doing something big and bold that really matters. It's what I've wanted to do. And tonight you've made me sit and think, actually, it's not about doing anything big or bold. And if there does come an opportunity where I can do something big and bold, you goddamn right, I'm going to take it. But actually, it's about those little moments, isn't it? Those little things where you're just thoughtful, where you remember somebody's name, where you remember something about somebody's life. And I seem to be able to do that naturally. My family's very like that. You know, Mark talks a lot about the impact his dad had on him and his mum and dad there. My granddad had a big impact on me when I was little, because he would talk to everybody, wherever they went, like they were his best friend. And I'd say, Granddad, who was that? Oh, no idea, boy. I've never met him before. But yet he would have shook his hand and just been warm and personable. That's impact. That's legacy. That's how I remember my granddad, right? And I emulated that because I saw how he made people feel. I saw how they walked away having conversations with him. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That's how I want people to react to me. You know, I want to impact their life so they walk away with a smile, because I know the next person they bump into, they're going to create that smile again. And it ripples out, doesn't it? In the same way as when you have a negative incident with somebody, and you decide to react from ego or from the past, and you say something stupid, or like Mark was saying earlier, when you lose your temper, and that spreads too, because if you upset somebody, you know, or hurt somebody, hurt people. So what I really love about what you've said tonight, Laura, is it's really made me think, actually, I don't need some grand, big, bold thing to change the world. I'm changing the world every day in the little moments. Like you say, just the little moments of growing my veg, or the little moments of having a chat with the postman when he turns up and to deliver my stuff, or the DPD man. That's legacy, right? I don't need something.
Absolutely. And we get so caught up in this word legacy. I mean, you know, so in the same vein, I kind of go back to Mark and, you know, the conversations we have all had around, you know, you said, you know, how you were learning about what safety meant for the wife and for the girls, etc. And that's legacy. That is you acknowledging that you needed to rethink about, you know, okay, well, I maybe haven't got this thing in the way that I'd understood it. You are setting an imprint, a legacy, because you are redefining how you see the world. For me, that is legacy. That is those small moments where there's a realization that you split the script, that you changed something, that you made a difference in that moment for your wife, for your daughters. That is legacy. It's not this huge grand thing where I'm going to create a grand plan and I'm going to have, you know, this major effect on everybody. No, actually, it is everyday moments.
And my hope would be that means that when they go out looking for a partner, if the partner doesn't treat them and create the safety that they want, they go, this isn't right, this isn't safe, this is how I should feel in these situations. Exactly. But they're never going to get anyone as good as me. But anyway, still, I tell them that.
Of course. I mean, that goes without saying, Mark. I mean, like,
Laura, just on the story you were telling there, like, I think, you know, it's very commendable how, and I could see clearly the emotion in you, because you really had to let go of something in order to provide that impact to other people. And that's a hard thing to do when you're holding on to something like that, because it's up to you to let go to create again. And maybe like that word legacy needs to be made a little bit redundant, because maybe it's being in service to others is what that really is, because that's what we're doing. And that being in service can be simply feeding them fresh food from our garden, can be letting them be seen and acknowledged and known, to creating a safe space for them to be wherever they need to be, because that's in service. And I don't mean, you know, I'm wary of that people pleasing and giving all of yourself to someone. I mean just being in service in the right way to someone, and not because I want them to like me, but because I know it's the right way to be, or the right thing to do.
I agree, Mark. I don't see myself as people pleasing. It drives me nuts when people go, oh, you know, it's people pleasing. No. I'm very aware what I do, what I don't do, and what I'm prepared to do, as it were. But I'm equally aware of being in service to, and what is true to what I believe and how I believe I should show up, and thus my legacy. Because I think but I think it comes back to this moments and what matters most to us. I think when you are really grounded in what matters most to you and how you see the world, etc., then actually it's much, much easier to go, that's how I want to show up. And I'm not prepared to show up. And the conversation I had earlier on today with somebody who was like in a place of, well, I had to turn my camera off because I so didn't. And I shared his exact same sentiments, but I said, I already knew what was going to happen. I knew how it's going to play out, but because I'd already written down where my place was, and I wasn't prepared to play into that game because that's not the place I play. The place I play, effectively the legacy, if you want to use that word, that I want to present to the world, because that is me. That legacy is the way I show up. That is who I am. That is what I value. That is what matters most to me. And that is how I guide everything that I do within life. And so that is my legacy. I'm not prepared to play as this other person was prepared to do. But that's because I am true to myself. And I think that when we understand who we are and what matters most to us, that becomes our legacy in effect, because we are just standing true to our values. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how
and it's the difference between performing a version of yourself for effect and being.
That's beautiful. But there's something I'm reminded of, right? I was asked at the weekend, because last was a Friday, I was given a talk to 350. It wasn't all men. It turned out there was about 4 women in the audience, maybe 6, who worked in this construction company. And it was around mental health and mental strength. And someone had died on site only a couple of weeks before, and they knew they had problems in this area. And the guy asked me to provide everyone with a list of contact numbers, right? And there's actually a free confidential helpline for the construction industry. It's actually a number, I called it. It's for the UK and Ireland together, and you can talk to someone directly. So, so I got this page printed out with all these different numbers on it. And I brought it with me. And I left it outside the room on the way out. And I gave everyone an instruction. I said, right, you might be sitting here and you're going, oh God, I can't listen to this crap about mental health and stuff. You know, this is just nonsense, right? And you might be thinking all this kind of thing, guys. But the instruction I gave to everyone, I said, what I need every single person, I focus on that. I need every single man to take one sheet of paper with them, fold it up and put it in their pocket. Because you might not need it, but the one man who needs that can't be seen to take it. So he needs every man to take it so that he can take it. And I was just trying to encourage the guys to let them know that the way we help people is by all doing it together. And that's how we do it. You know, like the impact you're creating through what you're doing there, Laura, is creating that we all do it together. The 3 of us are trying to do this together. We're trying to create impact. We're doing this together. And like, it's suddenly the power in the room changed by my request, because every man suddenly realizes, that's my responsibility now. It's my responsibility just to take a piece of paper so the man who needs that piece of paper has that piece of paper.
And that's, you know, absolutely. And ironically, and, you know, if I could share it now, the close to Saturday just demonstrated that beautifully, how when we come together, and the way that Clinton did it was he brought the room together, but he also demonstrated that when swans, geese fly in a V formation, actually that is how we are stronger together, because we're effectively looking after one another in this space. And it was just so powerful. I haven't shared the video as yet, but it just in that moment describes you feel what you have just described, Mark, and it was just so powerful. If you've been in the room, you were like, wow, watching the video exactly the same. It's just incredible because it's so true. It's giving that permission, that allowance, that it's okay, but it is okay. And so yeah. Well, I'm very conscious of time because it's been quite a different conversation this evening. I think, but a really, really good conversation as ever. Delighted to have you both as a bit, and I think we have to remember that together we are stronger, and we are always better together. So thank you both, and we will see you. I think next month is the 18th of December. Is that what we said?
Oh, well, do we?
I seem to recall
we did. We did.
Yeah. I think we have a couple of shows in between with Men as Allies, but there we go. Anyway.
We did.